There are many urban legends, myths, tall tales that you hear as you're growing up. The New York City alligator, for one, an alligator that lives in the sewers of New York, self explanatory. The Slender Man, Candyman, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever you want to call him, a Yeti, the Welsh werewolves, the werewolf or werewolves that roam through the valleys of Wales. So when you go there camping, you can stay up all night because you're worried stiff. But I'm here to forewarn you about the biggest shock that you were ever going to receive. Now, this isn't for the faint-hearted. If you scare easily, then lie down, but prepare yourselves, because during this episode of Talk of the Trinity, my co-host, Baz Barrett, says something positive about Arsenal. Yep, you heard me right. Baz said something nice about Arsenal Football Club. This is very weird Talk of the Trinity.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. I am Baz Barrett, as always. With me is Will Forrest, Mr. Talk of the Trinity himself, as always, letting him out from the mine shaft. That is the Twitter page at Talk Trinity, and manning the YouTube channel at Talk Trinity. Or is it at Talk of the Trinity now? I mean, there's plenty. If you're a subscriber, you know the answer. And if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button now on the YouTube channel. Also on our Twitter page, drop us a follow. And if you are listening to the delightful audio tones of us, you know where to find us on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Google, Geezer, Deezer, some other Weezers. They're a decent band, actually, back in the day.
Dirtbag.
Yeah, so, plenty of jokes we can make there in terms of that intro, but we haven't got time because we've got plenty to be digesting, ruminating, and looking forward to in terms of Villa over the last few days and looking forward to this weekend's fixture. I mean, we've got so much to go through that we haven't really even got time to talk about events at Elland Road last Thursday evening. Leeds 0, Villa 3. Mr. Trinity himself has already provided his 5-minute thoughts. Go and check it out on the aforementioned channels. But if you haven't listened yet, Coutinho was quite good. Villa deserve to win. Moving forward to Sunday's events, where we are going to be delving in a bit more detail to what happened at the London Stadium. 2:00 Sunday, West Ham 2, Aston Villa 1. And from my perspective, the game largely played out the way I thought it would literally in terms of I picked West Ham to win 2-1. But in terms of a close game, West Ham have been in that European chase and in Europe this season. So they're 1-2 seasons ahead of Villa kind of in their development project. But going into it, not a game to fear the Villa, thinking, oh no, we're going to go and get turned over. But in those moments, those kind of battles, sometimes quite literally in terms of some of the injuries that were inflicted, which we'll no doubt touch upon later. But just in those crunch moments, West Ham's know-how and just that little bit of experience paid in the end, really, because I thought we played all right. I mean, in terms of if it would have been a draw, I don't think West Ham could have complained. I think if Villa would have won, it would have been a story of taking our chances. And, in terms of you look at the stats, more shots on target with Villa, kind of more possession, just weren't clinical enough, really. So even though on the score line, a standard 2-1, quite a lot going on beneath the surface. But in more ways than one, we asked a question before the game: was this game more about West Ham than where Villa were? Based on what happened, still the same answer for you, Will?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was always a West Ham game. We obviously got the brilliant result against Leeds, and it was a performance where we didn't really have to get out of second gear, did we? Against Leeds away, it was very comfortable in the end. Though there were maybe one or two hairy-ish moments in the first half when they attacked a little bit. They brought that striker on, as the commentators called out for, and the strikers did nothing. They had one shot on target. But then moving on to West Ham was definitely more about them. I think they've been having a bit of a bad run recently. Obviously lost to Sevilla, which means that Sevilla have won the Europa League again.
Yep.
For the 78.9th time in the last 6 months, something like that.
Congratulations to them.
Well done, Sevilla. But it was all about West Ham. It was about them getting their season back on track, about them pushing for that top four, trying to make up ground on Arsenal, trying to get away from Man United as well. And, there was maybe the amount of games that we've had in the last week caught up with us. Yes, it's the same amount as they did, to be fair, but they're a lot more used to having midweek games with Europe at the moment. They know how to rotate their squad, but nothing really happened until they made the substitution, did it really? We had a couple of half chances. Coutinho's beautiful little Cruyff effort. Danny Ings had the shot tipped onto the post as well, a few inches the other way, and that's going, obviously it's going in or it's going wide. But yeah, and West Ham took their chances. They punished us. My thoughts, as I mentioned to our WhatsApp group with all of the usual friends of the show, was that Yarmolenko's goal was a very well taken goal. He didn't have much at the goal to aim into, and he struck it well. It was a hard ball to strike as well. I did feel, though, that Matty Cash and Ashley Young were caught a bit too high for the second. Yes, we're pushing on. We're trying to get a goal. They've been playing quite defensive for the rest of the game. But you look at the goal from behind, Martinez's goal, and Cash really isn't making much of an effort to get back. Young makes a bit more of one. You just want to see players getting back and putting pressure on. And Lanzini, his effort, maybe Martinez was a bit blocked, but you sort of thought he could have done a bit better with it. It was a poor goal to concede, really, from many points of view. But then JJ steps up, scores a beauty, absolute beauty. That was Emi Buendia again coming off the bench and showing why he's pushing for a starting lineup spot and why it's probably a bit cruel that he did get dropped previously. But yeah, there's positives to take from it. It was a close 2-1 against West Ham, and they had to beat us on the counter-attack in the end. And it was one of the best midfielders in the world in Declan Rice that drove forward and created their goal. They needed to rely on the likes of him to beat us. It's a result that if someone had said to you that you'll win 3 matches and then you'll lose to West Ham or you'll get 9 points out of 12, you probably would have taken it after the run that we were on, So it is what it is, and hopefully we can learn and bounce back against Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you put it in that way, 9 points out of 12 in that run, I think most fans would have taken that, just in terms of trying to get some momentum again. And I think, summed up nicely there in terms of Leeds, Villa, West Ham. Basically, I didn't think Leeds played too badly for the first hour. They had, when they had the pressure, mainly at the start of the second half, that was where to make it count, and they didn't. And then Villa did. They took their chance for the second, and Leeds collapsed after that.
100% agree. 100% agree with you, mate.
Similar story to Sunday, but not to the same extreme in terms of Villa had chances, didn't take them. As you said, West Ham were playing a more defensive game, a more tactical game, a more thoughtful game, whichever way you want to describe it. They had a chance, took it. Had another chance, took it. Bang. So they say the table doesn't lie in this time of the season. That's why Leeds are near the bottom. That's why we're in the middle. And that's why West Ham are pushing for Europe, just in terms of they are, just better at it. And I think in terms of up until Yarmolenko came on, the game was going kind of to Villa's script, really. I mean, the fact that nothing happened, apart from we had a couple of chances, was good news for us. Because, I think in terms of we would have taken a point before the game. I think not that you go in set up to take a point necessarily in that type of game, but, if it's choice between, a hard-earned point or a late defeat, you're going to take the point. But it's kind of a bit frivolous to talk about fate and things like that in football. But as soon as Yarmolenko came on, I think the script was written in terms of he gets a chance, he's going to put it away. And, you could say I think Chambers could have closed him down a little more. I think Gerrard said it after the game. He got turned a bit too easy. But the best chance of Yarmolenko scoring in that position, quick turn, first time hit, bang, take Martinez slightly unawares. Now, and that's exactly what happened. And evidently we saw the celebration afterwards. And I think even some of the Villa fans were applauding him, which is, sometimes there are bigger things than, a game at 2:00 on a Sunday, and Yarmolenko, fair play to him. I don't think I can really add much more nuance in terms of that. Second goal, I think we talked about it. I don't know if it was on air, but we certainly had a talk about Declan Rice making those runs from midfield, having really added that to his game, as opposed to a couple of years ago where he was seen as a bit more of a, bits and pieces player, in terms of get the ball, pass it short to somebody else, and then they kind of do the work. He's really added kind of an extra element to his game, which was evident for us all to see in terms of, defensively, I don't think we covered ourselves in glory. I agree with that. And I think like Lanzini finish, you can look at the goalie, but I think if Lanzini would have missed, I think the questions would have been, oh man, he really should have scored kind of from that position after all the hard work had been done in, lightning counter, really, in terms of, I think it's been, moving players backwards. You mentioned Cash not getting back. I think people have criticised Bailly for not having a particularly determined attempt to get the ball. I thought it was a bit harsh, kind of criticising Bailly really for that.
You tried to get back. You tried to get back, didn't you? At the end of the day,
Yeah, I think there's maybe other factors playing with Bailly, which we may touch upon later on. But you mentioned JJ, good finish. I mean, used the West Ham defender beautifully to block the goalkeeper, and then round. And that's, we talked about it previously. He's adding it to his game, really. Those edge of the box kind of strong finishes on the end of those runs. It's what you want from somebody who's going box to box. I mean, fully enough, in terms of, it's almost gone full circle with Ramsey, in that the start of the season there was more concern about if only he could finish. He was getting in those positions, and first goal for Villa wasn't, well, until I think it was Arsenal away, and that was a great finish. It was very.
Yeah.
He'd had a few chances before then and kind of scuffed them. Now he's kind of got that in his locker. It's almost the other way in terms of, if only he was a bit more defensive in how to get the tackle in, in terms of, instead of looking a bit clumsy in the tackle now, a few yellow cards for kind of not getting anywhere near the ball. But, so, it's kind of, that balancing act. But certainly going forwards, he's only going to build the confidence, finishes like that. And even though, like Arsenal is unfortunately in a losing cause, it still does add, to the tally, and does potentially lead him into other conversations that we'll come on to in a moment in terms of non-Villa related matters. But it was a bruising experience in more than one way. I mean, Louise and Chambers, the most banged up, in terms of still standing at the end of the game. See Dino going off early. It's a blow. Obviously he's first choice left back. He's probably second choice, third choice left back as well. But unfortunately, injured means, we'll be talking about the Arsenal preview a bit later. There's only really one player who you expect is going to come in, and is unfortunately a bit of a, it is a downgrade. we'll tune back later to see whether that opinion is walked back. But in terms of the West Ham game, I think it's just one. Expert analysis says just one of those days. In terms of, I don't think it's a game whereby you throw the toys out the pram, scrap. Kind of the tactical shifts that are being made, kind of the progress. It's the boxing parlance. We got beat by the fighter who had the right shots at the right time, and it's, you hope we learn from it. And next season we go to London Stadium and we do to West Ham what West Ham did to us. And if we are doing that, then we're making progress as a team. But realistically speaking, is it going to affect our season in the sense of, has it cost us Europe? Is it taking us closer to the drop? No, not really. I mean, we're just in a fun mini battle for ninth. And that's really what the extent of our games are for the rest of the season, trying to get that top half finish and get some momentum, as what we talked about previously, and no doubt will continue to talk about as the rest of the season progresses. But speaking of progression, things do move on, and there's always something new to talk about, and not always just Villa-centric on this podcast. I mean, we do try and put it on a Villa slant, obviously. That's why you're listening. Unfortunately, if you're an Arsenal fan who's tuned into this thinking we're pro-Arsenal, well, you might want to consider listening to something else in the next 10 minutes. But before we get to Arsenal, there is the small matter of the international break coming up and the England squad for 2 friendly games. Is it Switzerland, Ivory Coast?
Yep.
At time recording, the squads have not been announced. Squad's due to be announced on the Thursday, ahead of the Arsenal game on the Saturday. So that means we can wildly speculate in terms of what Gareth Southgate is going to be doing with that squad announcement. And you've got 2 ways you can approach the friendly games ahead of the World Cup taking place later in the year. You can either say we're going to use friendly games before the tournament to get some consistency in terms of selection, in terms of tactics. We're going to be trying to play as close as possible, injuries aside, to the team. We're going to be playing first day of the World Cup. Let's get them drilled. The alternative is you have a look at these friendly games as an opportunity to try some players who either have been in the fringes of the England squad before or haven't been called up to an England squad before and have had some good performances during the course of this season. Because there is usually one surprise player in a World Cup year who comes from nowhere, really, to get a seat on the plane for the World Cup. As we are wildly speculating, are there any Villa players, Will, who you think could come out of nowhere to get a seat on that plane for the World Cup, injuries permitting, in November?
Definitely, yeah. I think really you talk about England and you say about what should they do at this time of the year, with friendlies, we getting ready for the World Cup in November, and saying hello to Liam and stopping at his place. I believe that's where headquarters are going to be for the team. I've always been of the mindset that England should pick the most informed players. You don't necessarily have to always pick the same player all of the time because he's a top class, world class player. You pick the ones that are informed. And if you're going to do that, then Villa Park is probably one of the hottest destinations at the moment for English players, And the one person who I'm sure you want me to say really deserves a chance at the moment is JJ Ramsey. JJ, as you mentioned, has added goals to his games. Very good at hitting the top corners, isn't he, really? You look at the Arsenal goal, the West Ham goal was beautifully placed as well, as was his Man United goal at home. His driving run against Norwich away, a goal that I think some people have forgotten about, but he's probably goal of the season. He's the perfect number 8 at the moment. I think that he's doing okay defensively. He's strong. He's hard to knock off the board. He normally has 2 or 3 players chasing after him. He's got that little bit of a Grealishness to him in that way that he can draw players away. Maybe him and the aforementioned previous prodigal son line up with one another in the upcoming fixtures. But yeah, definitely Jacob Ramsey. But personally, I think he's one of maybe 5 players for us that could be discussed for this squad, especially with it just being 2 friendlies. I don't know about you. Is there anybody else apart from JJ that you think could be wearing the 3 Lions?
I mean, I thought you were going to say Ashley Young, to be honest. He's going to get a run. Yeah, he's going to get a run of games, and we haven't got many left backs. I mean, I think he's retired internationally or forced retirement, but you never know. In terms of their English players at Villa, and there's almost more than what you would think of at first glance. I mean, we're going through kind of a few off air before we started recording. I was like, wow, we've got quite a few actually. But in terms of players who are realistic in terms of thinking, they might get a shot in the starting 11, Ramsey's the closest, and I don't think we're going to play him in the starting 11. In terms of some players, like if you're right back, for example, I mean, you could say was this a factor in Matt Cash's decision to go and play for Poland? In terms of, we got about 427 right backs who are ahead of him in the team. Was that a factor? I mean, you don't know. But if he was a left back playing as he has been playing on the right, you would have thought he'd be in a chance with just getting in a squad in this type of game. So, kind of you are affected to a degree by your competition. And in that sense, that is where a couple of Villa players, I think, have a slight advantage of maybe having a nibble in terms of the squad. I mean, I think in terms of, evidently Tyrone Mings has been in the squad and played in the Euros last summer. I'm nervously checking. It was last summer. Yes, it was. I mean, lots happened since then. It has been third choice. I think that says more about the dearth of centre backs that England have had. I mean, you could have a whole different show in terms of the classic era of English centre backs where we had great players not even getting caps, let alone be third choice. That's where Chambers potentially sneaks in, because we haven't got too many centre backs. For me personally, does a month of games for Villa qualify him to play for England? I don't think so, if I'm being honest. Well, in terms of, if you're just looking in terms of, is the performance good enough? I don't think so. If we've got injuries, then obviously it's a whole different ball game. If he'd been absolutely dominant in all of his games, then yeah, maybe. But I think in terms of, Sunday, Gerrard himself mentioned in terms of he got turned a bit easy from Yarmolenko. I think in terms of some of the physical battles, I mean, international football is generally a lot less physical, so it might not be as much of an issue as opposed, to a induction against Dan Burn, who's another one who might be throwing himself into the centre-back hat just because of he's a big lad at the back and we haven't got too many others. So I think Chambers, I think it's too early for him. I mean, we'll come on to the Arsenal preview later as to whether we think he's going to be playing on Saturday or whether we think he should be playing. If he's still first choice Villa back at the end, first choice Villa centre back at the end of the season, yeah, I think, then we might be having a slightly different conversation because he's kept himself in the team ahead of a legitimate rival, if that is the case. At the moment, no. I mean, in terms of, I think it's too soon to say, yeah, he is an England international again. It's good he's getting games, and I think in terms of him coming to Villa and the reasons he came to Villa, it couldn't have gone any better for him kind of so far. And it couldn't for us, considering it was a free transfer. So fair play to him for that. Not begrudge him. And if he gets a run, you don't know. I mean, if Konza comes back into the team, you think he'd have a run. In terms of, is Konza going to be in the England squad? I don't think so, because he hasn't been playing. So, in terms of, if you're not in the Villa team, then I don't think you got a chance again in this England squad. But that'll be a fun debate, no doubt, kind of for our online followers if we ask them kind of which player should be in the England squad, and we'll wildly move our speculation onwards to, we've got Danny Ings, we've got Watkins up front. Again, in terms of, are they at the level to play, kind of that international centre forward role? I don't think so, being honest, but we haven't really got that many centre forwards kind of again. I mean, in terms of, understandably, our system from that attacking perspective is built around Harry Kane. And that's eminently sensible because of his record at international tournaments for England and his goal scoring record generally. So you'd be brave to not play Harry Kane. And he's had a slow start to the season, but he appears to be coming into form in the last few weeks. And, we've had, as long as he is in some sort of form and he scored some goals, he's going to be first choice. If he's not injured, then, mentioned kind of a few other players who may be in the Sterling last summer, kind of there was criticism in terms of club form, played very well for England in the tournament. So you'd anticipate that's the, you mentioned in terms of you play the players who are in form. That is, I think there's currently, I think there's two players in the England squad moving slightly aside from Villa Matters for 30 seconds who fall into that category. If you're going on form, they don't play. If they're going in form of England form, they do play. Sterling, Pickford, they're the two. If you're going in terms of how they play for England, Pickford hasn't really put a glove wrong for England. So in that sense, he's going to play. Sterling performances evidently at the Euros last summer, even though he's not first choice at Man City, you think he's going to play for England unless he runs over. I was going to say runs over a cat, but I think you got to do a lot more cats to not play football anymore. But that's for our sister podcast. They can delve into that side of things in a bit more detail. But Ings, Watkins, if you've got Kane up front, I don't see either of them being in the first choice. In terms of the squad, because we don't have that many centre forward options. In terms of if one of them is going to be in, I'd say it'd be Watkins out of the two. I mean, I think in terms of Ings has been in the team recently, kind of doing a different type of role, working hard, kind of running the channels, being a team player. You're not going to get in the England team playing up front doing that, frankly. Watkins, just because he's been scoring more consistently, you could see a role from him. If Roy Hodgson was still in charge, then I think he is more kind of in the Watkins mold of play. People work hard, work in the channels. But yeah, I mean, Watkins may come along for the ride for the squad. I can't see both. I mean, I can't see either, but if I was going to say one, I'd say Watkins over Ings. But we do have probably the number one Danny Ings fan amongst the Villa fan base here. So it would be remiss of me not to open the floor at this point for the inevitable counter that is going to take place in the next 5 minutes as to why Danny Ings should be playing up front for England and Harry Kane should be back at the training ground, preparing the oranges for the players at half time. So Ings and Watkins for you in the England squad?
Well, let's just start with a disclaimer. If you're not a Danny Ings or Tyrone Mings fan, then put your headphones down for the next 5 minutes because you ain't going to like this, because Ings are about to get better. Yes, got it in. Thank you very much. I'm going to talk about all of them, apart from JJ. We touched upon JJ. Chambers ahead of Conser most definitely at the moment. Sorry, internet fans, not because Conser's rubbish at all, because of what you said. Conser hasn't been playing. Ever since he got that red card, he hasn't found his way really back into the team. He played the one game against Brighton, but then he was out again with COVID and Chambers kept his place. And I love that Gerrard said Chambers has kept his place because he's playing well and he deserves to keep it. It's the competition we've needed for a while. Yep. It's what we touched upon on the last episode of, do we have 3 first choice centre-backs now? And Hawes is like a backup to whoever isn't starting. If you haven't listened, go and have a listen. It was our Leeds West Ham previews. I think with Chambers, okay, I thought he played very well against Southampton. I thought he capped it off with that beautiful pass with the outside of his right boot. He played very well against Leeds, capped it off with that beautiful goal with the inside of his right boot. So he's very good with his right boot.
Yep, great finish.
Yeah, you know, probably could have done a bit better against West Ham, but it was a very good goal. I've seen players join new teams and not play as well as Chambers has over 4 games and get into the England squad before.
Yep.
So it wouldn't surprise me if he did. And for me, none of our players really going to be troubling the usual suspects, the starting 11, just yet, really, except for one. And at the moment, I think that they should just be aiming for the squad. Is Chambers good enough to get into the squad at the moment? I think so. You look at the choices of centre-backs based upon form rather than reputation, and you've got Ben White at Arsenal. Arsenal are doing very well. 5 games, winning streak, Arteta's first ever. There you go, Arsenal fans, something nice about you.
Yep.
Ben White's doing quite well for him. John Stones is coming in every now and again for City. He's played right back as well because, well, Southgate's going to pick him now, isn't he, if he's played right back once. He's also played DM for him a few times, not this season, but he's played centre-back. He's doing quite well. Gomez is feeding his way back in. Out of those 3, I can see Stones and White getting into the England squad. Maguire doesn't deserve to be in there at the moment. He's not having the best of times. Eric Dyer at Tottenham's not doing too badly, but Tottenham aren't on the greatest run when you look at the last 10 matches or so. So Chambers, yeah, potentially deserves to get in. Tyrone Mings, for me, and I'm going to put this question to you, I think Tyrone Mings has been very hard done by. I don't think he's a world-class centre-back, but I think that when you represent your country as often as he does, then you're definitely European Football League standard in regards to Europa League or Champions League. You know, I actually think that Tyrone Mings is very hard done by fellow Villa fans some of the times, not all of them. There's a lot who love him. But he was very hard done by last year at the Euros when he played so well. He's kept so many clean sheets for England. Then Maguire came back in. You can understand it because he's that figure, is that, you know, centrepiece of the England defence. But I think on current form and how they've been playing, Tyrone Mings deserves to play. And I'd actually have Tyrone Mings as one of the top 4 in form England centre-backs at the moment, probably top 2, you know. And I'd start him. Why not start him in these matches? They don't mean anything. It's a time where you can experiment. Do you think Tyrone Mings would deserve to start at the moment over Maguire when you look at form?
Yeah, I think Maguire also, I mean, you know, I mentioned Pickford, Sterling. I mean, to be fair, Maguire falls into that category in terms of his form is worse than I think Pickford and Sterling over the course of this season. But you look at the Euros last summer, Mings played, you know, I think the Scotland game, probably one of the worst games on record, but kept a clean sheet, which is all you can do from a defensive perspective. Maguire comes back in the rest of the tournament, you know, you get to the final. I mean, in terms of Maguire playing in that tournament, there isn't really too much room for criticism in terms of his performances. So that's really, you know, the example of club form versus international forms. Like with the England team as another club, really, you know, in terms of if you're playing okay for England, you're going to be in the team. In terms of Mings, I think perfectly encapsulates the kind of the teaser we put out there in terms of, do you play who's going to be your strongest team or do you experiment? Mings, he kind of falls in between both camps in terms of he's played at, you know, European championships and steps in. And I think that, you know, there may have been especially amongst the non-Villa fan base, maybe even some of the Villa fan base, seeing him playing the first couple of games in the Euros, thinking, "Oh God, this is not going to go very well." And he played well, and he equipped himself. So, in terms of your point, is he Europa League level? Yep, definitely. Could he, play? It depends who qualifies for Champions League. Yeah, but maybe. I mean, you're not going to rule it out, but he's proved that an international tournament he can step in and play, and it's almost in terms of the friendly, he hasn't got anything to prove almost in terms of he was the backup. He's demonstrated he is able to come in and play. Do I think he should be first choice centre back for England? No, I don't, to be honest. But the point you make is a good one in terms of form. In terms of league form, there's not a huge amount of players to choose from. If you just want the players who kind of absolutely dominating at centre back for teams in the Premier League or English, that's a pretty short list. So in that regard, it is a tricky situation. So I can see why Southgate will go, okay, these players who've performed at international level before, Stones and Maguire, who were the main choice centre back partnership last summer, who demonstrated they can do it at international level. But it does mean that for these games, there's more scope for the experimental picks, the Ben Whites, the Chambers, if Chambers is in the squad, in terms of, they're probably not going to be first choice, but we might need, third, fourth, fifth kind of backup. Maybe somebody like Ben White and Chambers both played defensive midfield at points in their careers. I think Chambers has played there a bit more often, but versatility, is not a bad thing if you're looking to try and shoehorn yourself into the 23rd seat on the plane. So maybe you almost go the other way in terms of that experimentation, as you mentioned, which takes Mings out of it, funnily enough, in terms of if you're picking a squad in terms of the best players now, in terms of if we were picking the World Cup squad tomorrow, would Mings be in it? Yeah, I think he would, to be honest, in terms of you try and take maybe 4 centre backs to World Cup, that usual number, maybe a fifth who plays defensive mid, kind of something like that. Are there 4 proven international centre backs ahead of Tyrone Mings? No, but there's not. Regardless of whether you think he is good enough to play centre back for England at a tournament, the reality is we haven't got 4 or 5 other people who've proven themselves that they can, and he's in that category. So by default, for me, more than anything, he's going tomorrow World Cup squad, he's on it. So I mean, you can have wider debates in terms of what that says about centre back quality in English football, but that doesn't detract from the fact I would have him in this, that proverbial World Cup squad tomorrow. A lot can happen in 9 months, but for me, it's not quite a no-brainer, but you're close in terms of if you got somebody who can step in, you got to have a pretty good reason not to take them. And Mings, he's had up and down games this season, but has his form fallen off a cliff enough to kind of say, oh God, that's terrible? No, it hasn't. I mean, this has been at club level, it's been a Tyrone Mings season. He's had some good games. He's had some crap games. He's had, the defense generally looks better when he's in it. That encapsulates his Villa career basically in a nutshell, and how that divides the fan base, because in terms of some fans don't want to put up with the crap games because they think, we should have somebody in at centre back who has very few crap games. People on the other side think, well, yeah, he does have some crap games, but that's worth it because look at the state of the defence when he's not in it. It's a lot worse. And both can be right, but on the internet you can't have 2 people being right. You got to have somebody wrong and somebody kind of right. That's why he has such debate. I mean, the reality, kind of, we've had the Mings debate before. We'll have it again, no doubt, in terms of Tyrone Mings represents where Villa are at this level, and you can argue that we should be aspiring to better. That's maybe the board want to aspire to better because we're going for Europe, but the reality is we are where we are. Mings is where we are. we got to deal with it. And I think that's for England as well in terms of the centre back. We are where we are. Mings is your third choice centre back. Deal with it. It's kind of my view on that.
Well, as much as I say that we should experiment, I think that Mings should be rewarded and should get a place in the starting lineup for this game. And I mean experiment, as I say, by form at the moment. And for me, Tyrone Mings is probably the first central defensive pick on the last few games. Moving on to strikers at the moment. I mean, you're right. You sum Harry Kane up perfectly. Harry Kane is the ultimate England striker at the moment. He will be for the next 2 to 3 years. There's no replacing him. He's a fantastic forward. He's not even a striker, is he? He's more of a centre forward. He's somebody with an incredible range of passing. Creates a lot of assists, gets a lot of goals as well. And he's recently rediscovered his goal scoring form, and he looks very happy playing football at the moment. Whether he's happy at Tottenham still, I don't know. Don't really care, because he'll be joining Newcastle in the summer anyway. But for me, so for that reason, with him to move away really from the whole, if you're playing really well, you deserve to be starting in these matches, like I've just said with Mings, I actually wouldn't start Kane, because we know that he's going to be on that plane unless he gets injured or he doesn't score a goal between now and then, though I find that highly unlikely.
Even then, I still think he'd play.
Probably. I mean, he probably won't score in August, let's be honest, but he'll score enough in September and October prior. So it then boils down to Ings and Watkins, and on current form, both of them, I believe, should be called into the England squad. I don't think they'll both make the World Cup. I'm going to hate myself again for this. Out of the two of them, Watkins probably goes to the World Cup. Out of them, Watkins has offered a little bit more. In regards to who plays these next games, I mean, I can't see any England forwards who are better than them at the moment. Calvert-Lewin has been on a dreadful run of form this season, injuries aside. And Patrick Bamford is only just coming back from injury, so he probably doesn't get a look in just yet. For me, I think Danny Ings is the closest thing we've got to a Harry Kane type of forward, in regards that he'll drop deep, he'll get the ball, he'll create chances. Beautiful assist for Matty Cash with that pass against Leeds. Very clever assist for the Coutinho goal against Southampton, and also scored as well. But Gareth Southgate doesn't like Harry Kane to play for England in the same way that he does for Tottenham, which potentially goes against things a little bit there. So you want the fresh legs up front, and you want the running in behind and getting onto the ball and converting chances. Ollie Watkins has scored a couple more recently and has been working his socks off. We don't play two up front for England. Southgate probably isn't going to try a new formation. So you go with one of them per game. I'll give Ings one game, I'll give Watkins the other. And if they're not doing it after 70 minutes, you bring Kane on there. Who else is there really from an England striking point of view that you can put up front? You've got Callum Wilson out injured at the moment for Newcastle, so it's not going to be him. Calvert-Lewin, as I say, hasn't been doing it for Everton, and neither has.
He's been injured and also coming back into a struggling team. That doesn't help Calvert-Lewin.
No, of course not. And to be fair, Calvert-Lewin is probably the second best striker that we've got for England. You know, when he's up when he's fit on the day.
Definitely.
Bamford had a great season last season, very much like Ollie Watkins. He's been injured for quite a bit this year, unfortunately for him. He looked sharp against us when he came on, so maybe there won't be that second season syndrome. Apart from that, I don't see Southgate either doing a Man City and saying, oh, we'll stick Sterling or Foden or Grealish as a false nine.
No.
He's not going to do that. He's going to want one striker in the middle who can get into the box, score goals and set up a couple. Ings and Watkins are your perfect guys to give a chance to at this moment in time, especially based upon current form since that game against Brighton, the last 4 games, because they've both scored goals, they've both set up goals. So I think that you've got at least 4 Villa players there who can really be hoping to get a call from Southgate, and that's Mings, JJ, and the two front guys. And if Callum Chambers gets in as well, based upon recent form, I wouldn't be surprised. Though we both know full well that the only player who's going to get called up for England is Ashley Young, as you said earlier.
Tournament ready. Yeah, he's proved it, at the World Cup, 2018. So a run of games at left back, if Digne is out for longer than anticipated at time of recording, then, well, you never know. I mean, I don't think he's going to the World Cup, but, we can wildest dream. But where we are going now is to look to the future. Not quite the World Cup, but Saturday at Villa Park, 12:30 kickoff, Villa v Arsenal. The fans will be celebrating the 7 England call-ups that we're going to be getting to that England friendly squad for the following week. And what better way to test yourself to see whether you are worthy of that international call-up than against the form side, really, in the Premier League. 5 wins on the bounce. I say form side. Liverpool have also won 5 on the bounce. Chelsea have also won 5 on the bounce. But at time recording, I should say this is before Arsenal play Liverpool on Wednesday night. So it could be 6 in a row, or mass fans will tell you if they haven't won 6 in a row, they've either drawn or lost. But I think in terms of regular listeners of the show may know that I don't very often like to miss an opportunity to put a boot into Arsenal, but I can't really. I think out of the teams who've been on that winning run of form, theirs is the most impressive, because they took an approach in January in the transfer window of, we know what the team we want to play. We know what our starting 11 is, kind of that key squad of players we want to take forward for the next couple of years. Anybody who's outside of that, they can go. And they cut a lot of players in January who you might have been thinking, they could, they would have been decent for the squad, in terms of they got a lot of games, second half of the season, couple of injuries, they're going to be cut to the bone. They did such a good job at cutting it to the bone. They had a game called off, I think, against Spurs because they just didn't have enough players because they got rid of them all. It was a bold approach, but at time of recording, you have to say it's worked. And they were a bit of a joke at the start of the season, Arsenal, and I was having a good old time laughing at them. And, what turns out is the biggest joke is I thought we might get a result at the Emirates back in October. We didn't, suffice to say. And a lot of things have happened since then. So really pains me to say this, and I am having to have a gulp of liquid before this to get me through what I'm about to say. Fair play, Arsenal. God, that hurt. In terms of, I can't really criticise them. In terms of, are they a team who's going to win the league? No. Were they a team expected to win the league? No. Did I think they'd be qualifying for the Champions League at the start of the season? No. They're in the best chance out of those teams scrapping for that 4th place. If I had to put my pound on them or Man United to come forth, I'd put it on Arsenal, which, bringing it back to a Villa perspective, because I need to go and lie down about that praise. It means it's going to be a difficult game on Saturday at Villa. And we've won the last couple of games at home against Arsenal. If we make it 3 on the bounce, then a lot of things have gone right for us on Saturday. We've either had the perfect game, absolutely smash Arsenal out the park, or we've capitalised on mistakes, or we just got plain lucky. Plenty of ways to win a game. But, in terms of, if Arsenal turn up on form, and I think if we try and take them on toe-to-toe, we're going to get banged. So we need a different way of playing. Our own way of playing. We've been talking about the formation that we've been playing under Gerrard for the last few games, 4-3-1-2. Starting there, do you play that against Arsenal?
Yeah, Most definitely. And I'd just like to point out that the reason that you think that Arsenal's recent run of form is most impressive is because you think Arsenal are rubbish, really. So,
I'm used to
apart from
Arsenal.
recent,
Yeah, I'm used to Arsenal being terrible and a laughing stock for the last few years, and old habits die hard, especially when you enjoy those habits. So I'm having to reevaluate. But they hadn't done. I mean, when they were losing to, did they lose to Forest in the FA Cup?
Yep.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Yeah, that was good.
Lewis Grabban.
Yeah, but I'll give credit where it's due, so I'll give it that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of, well, they always beat me on FIFA, so
Credit where it's due. It was a great result for Forest.
Yep.
But moving on, I think we have to play the 4-3-1-2. Arsenal, yes, they got width. They tend to play a 4-2-3-1, don't they? With Smith Rowe, Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli at the moment as those, some of the attacking options they can use. I think that having the 4-3-1-2 allows us to nullify that a little bit, but it also gives us the advantage that if they've got their two central midfielders who are a little bit more holding and not Rob holding than anybody else in Partey and Zaka, then it means that one of them may have to just drop on to Philippe Coutinho because the two centre-backs aren't going to be able to mark him. They've got Ings and Watkins to deal with. Two players who are high on confidence after getting calls up to the England squad.
Yep.
Philippe Coutinho then pulls one of their other players into being even more defensive or running around the pitch after him, like we've seen most teams try to do since we've had Philippe Coutinho in our team. And the only team to really be able to nullify him was probably West Ham to some extent. It then creates more options, doesn't it? Because our back four should be able to watch the four Arsenal attacking players. And you add Douglas Luiz into that as well. That's 5 versus 4. It then leaves Partey on his own against Ramsey and McGinn. Maybe not McGinn. If you've voted on Twitter, I'm sure you'll come onto that in a little while after you get your tissues ready.
Yeah.
But I think it gives us a lot of options. The only thing really we'll have to watch the marauding fullbacks. If they can get their fullbacks forward, that's going to cause us problems with them attacking down the wings. But hopefully we can do enough ourselves with the likes of the little Brazilian, Philippe Coutinho, and the form that Watkins and Ings are in to cause problems for them. And as I say, one of the central midfielders marking Coutinho a bit closer will help McGinn, Sanson, JJ, whoever it is, get forward and attack. However, if they decide to leave Coutinho alone, then more fall them because, other top teams have tried to not worry about him so much and let him do what he wants to do. Top teams, I use the word lightly when I talk about Man United, but they did. And in 20 minutes, Philippe Coutinho drew us the game.
Yeah, well, and Southampton. Well, they've
a top team, yeah.
But they were. Now they've started losing since we schooled them. So that was the Coutinho effect.
Well, I think because of that, you really hope that Arsenal get a result against Liverpool. Because if Arsenal can get a result against Liverpool and make it 6 unbeaten, then we are the worst team for them to play. As we've said before, Southampton are going and beating everybody for the last 24 years, come to Villa Park and get spanked. I think we've got enough in our locker anyway to beat Arsenal if we can play to our best, and also after having a week, pretty much a week's rest. Yes, Arsenal are doing very well considering the fire sale they had, and I imagine that only a few weeks ago, some of the Arsenal fans were thinking, why on earth did we sell Aubameyang? After the form that he's had for Barca. But they're doing very well. They're getting goals still. They're sharing goals around the team. So it'll be a difficult game. But it's not one of those games like in the early noughties where you'd think, oh, God, no, not Arsenal. Armory, Bergkamp, Ljungberg, Pires, the list is endless of the quality players they had. Now it's a case of, all right, we've got Arsenal.
Yeah.
No women or are in after that.
Yeah, it's a game now whereby if you win your battles, then you're in a great chance of winning the game. And speaking of battles, we've mentioned there a few of the players who may be playing from the Villa side. We did put out our obligatory expected Twitter votes for what the team would be. I mean, most of those are uncontroversial picks. I mean, Martinez in goal, Cash at right back, Young at left back with Digne injured. Suggestion that he's out for at least 3 weeks. Lucky there's an international break, so hopefully mitigate that damage. Tyrone Mings playing. JJ, you mentioned, Coutinho, Ings, Watkins. Then the votes from the fans got a little more spicy in terms of Konza won the fans' vote in terms of centre-back. I mean, we talked about the Konza Chambers debate from the England squad perspective. When it comes to Saturday, you playing Chambers?
Yep, if he's fit, I play him. I don't think he's done too badly that Konza deserves to come back in. But if Gerrard goes with Konza, then fair play. Whichever two it is at centre-back, I'll support him, unless it's Tyrone Mings because he's rubbish and nobody likes him. I'm only joking, Tyrone. I love you. You know that. I love you. I cleaned my house millions of times because of you.
That's because you hired him as a cleaner and he just did a really terrible job. So you loved him that much, you kept having him back. But yeah, I mean, that's the same for me. I mean, if Chambers plays, he hasn't played that terribly to deserve being dropped. But if Konza plays, then, well, you're looking at it in terms of you think he may be slightly better on the day. So I wouldn't argue too much either way. Then we're in our midfield trio. JJ, we think is going to play. Then the fans also put Douglas Luiz and Sanson in, so no space for McGinn. I think realistically, those are the 4 players who can play. Well, anybody can play, but who are realistically going to be 4 players for 3 places. Luiz, Sanson, JJ. Is that what you go for?
It's a tough one. I mean, Douglas Luiz has obviously got his injury, but hopefully will be fit enough to play this weekend, even if Steven Gerrard said he wouldn't be fit enough to be kissing. And apparently he needs reconstructive surgery on his lip. So dependent on when that gets done. In many ways, it's a shame that this match hasn't come 2 weeks later because Nakamba's hoping to be fit in the next 2 weeks. And he's definitely the sort of player who excels in games against Arsenal, usually at home. For me, I mean, I think McGinn deserves to play. And I know that you're going to be happy that I've said that because I know you're a little bit upset when I told you that the fans hadn't picked McGinn. It's the JJ Sanson debate. And as good as JJ has been playing this season, you do start to think at times that maybe he needs a bit of a rest. So you put Sanson in. Sanson's done enough when he's come on to show that he's a very good player and he deserves a chance. He's a very good passer of the ball, retains it well, links beautifully with Luca Din, who unfortunately is injured. Maybe that's because they're speaking French to each other and the opposition can't understand. You never know. It does happen. Yep. I'd probably stick with JJ just ahead of him now, but be thinking that if we haven't got a foothold on the game come half time or just after, that Sanson comes on. I do really hope that he gets some chances before the end of the season based upon his performances, because it would be a shame if we never actually get the opportunity to give him a good run of games and see him fulfill his potential in a Villa shirt. But John McGinn being dropped, I mean, that must hurt for you.
Not really, because
you're playing it cool. Yeah. Ross and Rachel, we were on a break. I don't like John McGinn.
No, not in terms of I don't like John McGinn. It's just like, we'll let the internet decide that. But in terms of McGinn's playing, for me, it's like in terms of it's we get the views of the fans. It's good. Everybody has a different opinion. I mean, we literally have a different opinion because the fans have picked one midfield. You've picked a different one, and I'm going to pick a different one again because I think Sanson should play ahead of Luiz. So I've got that McGinn, Sanson, JJ midfield three. So we've got three different midfields between us, with JJ the only constant between all of our respective picks. But, I mean, everybody has their, slight biases in terms of favourites and players. And, obviously I rate McGinn. You may have heard me talk about it before. But in terms of looking at it objectively as I can, in terms of the four players who we got, who's been in the best form, who's likely to contribute more to the team on Saturday, McGinn's not fourth in that list. So kind of by default, I think he gets in the team. Again, similar to Mings. I mean, you can have an argument about whether he's been in top form, this season or over the last few games. It's been up and down. I think he's had some very good games, some not so good games. But a game against Arsenal, where if you're going to throw in the cliches about, Arsenal not being quite as battle hardened as they have been previously, if you're going to pick a bruiser to be in the centre of midfield, you're picking McGinn. So for me, note the fans' opinion. Don't agree with you. I look forward to seeing McGinn play on Saturday. So not really much more for me to say in terms of that. But if McGinn what's going to happen now is we kind of did a similar thing off air before the Southampton game on a couple of weeks ago. Who's playing left back? A respected pundit said that Ashley Young was going to play. We laughed, and then Ashley Young played. So the same's going to happen again. McGinn, something's going to happen to him in the warm-up. He's going to get stuck in the drive-in queue at the Bristol Road McDonald's or something, and so he's not going to play. And so my bold prediction is going to look foolish. But yeah, I think it's a no-brainer playing McGinn, frankly. In terms of,
you're quite happy to take the internet on, aren't you? You're like, let me at him. You're like, Scrappy do.
Well, it's in terms of, I just don't see how he's not one of our top three midfielders when we've got a choice of four, and the opposition we're playing against. I just don't see how he doesn't play unless he's injured or other things that happen. I would play him. But
I do like disagreeing with you from time to time and winding you up a little bit. But I completely agree. I think that John McGinn's been playing well enough. I said after the Leeds game, I didn't think he started brilliantly against Leeds. Southampton. He didn't start brilliantly against Southampton, but he definitely imposed himself in the game as it went on. He played well against Leeds as well. There is no reason why John McGinn should not be expecting to start against Arsenal. I think Sanson in for Louise is a call that could be made. Obviously, it could be made. Though I believe that Douglas Luiz has been playing very well recently against Leeds. I thought he was superb in the way he was keeping the ball and moving the team forward when he got on it. Maybe because he's not having to play as deep, but against Arsenal, maybe we do need somebody to sit that bit deeper because of the talents of Martin Odegaard and Emile Smith-Rowe and Bakary Saka. So, yeah, I mean, going back to McGinn starts. I don't see why you wouldn't, unless something happens, such as the McDonald's thing that you've said. The Bristol Road traffic is terrible.
It is.
At the best of times. And
if your favourite McFlurry's out of stock, it does take a while to think of an alternative menu choice, especially if you end up one of those apple pies. I mean, it's about 4 hours waiting for it.
Well, two of them molten. They're absolutely molten.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
You're waiting about 4 hours for it to cool down, unless you get in a situation where you can't wait, and then you end up with Douglas Luiz has got an injury to his face after being kicked by West Ham. If McGinn gets an injury to the inside of his mouth because of the hot molten lava McDonald's apple pie, then what a call that is from us. And speaking of calls, debates the team aside, Coutinho, Ings, Watkins, as we said, we think they're playing, so don't need to spend too much time on that. But in terms of hot calls, will we be having the taste of victory at round about 2:30, 3:15 on Saturday from Arsenal, or are we going to be crying those hot tears of defeat or draw? So how do you think the score is going to end up for you, Will?
I've got to say, I think you need to see a doctor if you've got hot tears, because I've never heard of that before in all my years as a nurse.
I think it's been hit with a frying pan kind of after it's had the oil kind of on it for a while.
You definitely need to see a doctor about that, didn't you? But I am ever optimistic, as per usual. I think that we will steal it. I think it'll be a steal in regards to the result, but I think that we'll more than match Arsenal as much as we need to. If we can get 40% possession, I'll be happy with that, because we tend to beat teams when we have that amount of possession.
Yep.
I'm going to go for a cheeky 1-0 win. A 1-0 win, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was a Callum Chambers, Esri Konsa, Tyrone Mings type of a goal scorer, someone that we're not really expecting. However, talking about people that we're not really expecting, and it goes back to the lineup, I hope you don't mind. For me, you see on Twitter that we should play the kids now because there's nothing left to play for. We are still quite close to those European spots. Let's try and get as close to them as we possibly can. We're 5 or 6 wins off the relegation spaces. I don't think we're going to go down, and I don't agree usually with play the kids. We might as well. Results don't matter. They do. They matter to Steven Gerrard as well. However, it's time to look to the future. And Chrisen, I throw him in at left back, even if he only gets through to half time, or give him half an hour in the second half. Plan to. I hope we get to see him on the pitch this weekend ahead of Ashley Young. As much as Ashley Young has done for us over his whole career, when he was here first and how he's done this season, I'd go with Ben Chrisen at left back in a 1-0 Villa win.
Well, those are calls hotter than the Matt Donald's apple pie all over the place. I mean, I didn't think that was. I said I didn't think that was like possible, but we've reached it. I think in terms of playing the kids debate, what I would say is, if Gerrard generally believes that it may be 1, 2, 3, however many in that first team kind of training pool now, if he thinks they are genuinely good enough to be challenging, not for the squad, but for the first 11 next season, then I'd play them. If it's a situation whereby it's like, there might be decent squad players, or we've had a few injuries, kind of a left back, for example, and we might need somebody as a reserve to play. No, I wouldn't throw the kids in, because in terms of, we got a hard run of games, kind of coming up, and nothing's going to have a negative effect on confidence more than throwing somebody in who you're not quite thinking is going to be there really challenging for a first team place, and watching them kind of get ran around the park. So I wouldn't make those changes for change's sake. And I think also in terms of, from a Villa perspective, we're done. I don't think we're ever in the race for Europe, but we're not qualifying for Europe, is my view. But we're looking to do it next season. And so in terms of trying to build that tactical consistency with the players who are left, who you think are going to be in the starting 11 August next season, given that run of games, we're playing a different formation than we did do during the first few months of the Gerrard reign. If this is going to be a feature going forwards for next season, then you're playing Ings, you're playing Watkins up front to try and get that relationship going. In terms of the player at the moment who you think is most likely to break up that duopoly is out on loan. I'm not going to say who, so you can speculate as to which one you would be playing up there. So you play, I still think, because we're looking to build for the future in terms of European qualification, not just gut the team and play kids. I think you play the best team. And Chrisen, I'll be honest, I don't know enough about him to see whether we are saying he's a legitimate, we might be giving Digne a run for his money at left back next season. If he is, give him a few games. Why not? If it's, we're a bit low on numbers, and he might be a prospect. He might be okay. We might send him out on loan next season to League One maybe, or Championship. No, I wouldn't throw him in against an informed Arsenal team, and that's the same for a number of players. Like you got obviously Tim. If we think he's going to be better than the Camber? Yeah, maybe throw him in for a game or two at defensive midfield to see how he goes. If we think we might get him a few minutes in the Premier League to send him out on loan, then no, I wouldn't play kids just for the sake of it.
I think I'd ask the question in regards to Ben Chrisen for this weekend of next season, Luca Dean, first choice, obviously first choice. Are we likely to bring in Aaron Hickey or another left back? I don't know. But if we don't bring him in, who's going to be the backup? Who would you prefer to be backup? Ben Christen, young up-and-coming player, or Ashley Young, left winger turned left back, reliable player who is a leader on the pitch as well. Which one do you see being the backup to Luca Dean next season and the season after, and being the one to eventually potentially take his place? And for me, it's Ben Chrisen all over. And if Ashley Young signs again next season, I wouldn't be saying to Ashley Young, you're going to be our fullback cover. I'd say to him, you're going to have a place on the bench most weeks. I'll use you when I need to use you. Sometimes that'll be further forward, as Gerrard has done, as Smith did as well. I'm not going to be playing you centre back or centre midfield if I can help it, or in goal. But, you're not going to be second choice left back. You're going to be more of a utility man. You get your football manager. It's going to have RB, LB, LDub, RDub, LM, RM. All of that sort of stuff on there, rather than, yes, he's our backup left back. So that's why I'd go for Ben Chrisen over Ashley Young this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I hope the fantasy football, the football manager speculation. Hope we get Hickey. So in terms of him and left back, I mean, Chrisen strikes me as somebody who could do with his season on loan somewhere, to kind of really get some experience rather than throw him straight into the team. But, if I agree with a situation where we've identified he is going to be backup left back next season, then yeah, it makes sense to play him, especially if your prediction of a 1-0 win comes true. So then he's got the clean sheet, perfect confidence going forward. And I suppose that leaves it for my prediction, really. And it's, I'm going to lay a trap in terms of, I've already had to give Arsenal some credit, which doesn't sit very well with me at all. So I'm going to leave something. So I'm a winner. Well, not literally a winner in both ways, in terms of I'm going to go for Arsenal to win. And if Arsenal win, then, well, I got the prediction right, which isn't great, but, that happened. But if Arsenal revert back to type and they're terrible, then I've got the delight of a Villa victory to play with. And also to say, yes, I can go back to being slating on Arsenal. They're not really very good. So that would be a double win for me. I think Arsenal, again, subject to what happens against Liverpool on Wednesday night, we haven't had the benefit of seeing how that happens, whether there's injuries, whether they win, whether they get banged. I think it's going to be, I'm going to go 3-1 Arsenal, which is a big call kind of against Villa. But if they don't get too much of a hiding against Liverpool, yeah, I mean, I can see a pathway to Villa getting a result out of this game. We kind of descend into slight cliche territory, win our individual battles, get on top of them early. And I think in terms of the longer the game is 0-0, the more it plays into Arsenal's hands. If we get a lightning start, then can Arsenal cope with that pressure? Maybe not. But just going on the form book, I think Arsenal will win. I'm going to go 3-1. But as always, happy to be proved wrong, and hope I'm proved wrong, because if ever there's a team I don't want to be going away from Villa Park with a comfortable victory, it is Arsenal. And speaking of uncomfortable experiences, that brings an end to this podcast. And, I'm sure you will be getting involved in terms of your thoughts on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity. You can step into the comments section on our YouTube channel, Talking to Trinity, or the good old-fashioned audio version. Just shake your head and tut in disbelief. If you're listening to us on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Google, Deezer, I mean, I may need, a bit of cleaner or some, all sorts of products to try and clean up my reputation kind of after this. But before I pass you over to Will for his final thoughts, and also, just to try and give him the opportunity to recover from the shocking prediction that I put forward. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we get a win, but I hope even more that you've enjoyed this podcast, predictions aside, and look forward to being with you soon. So cheers for now.
Well, I'm lost for words. So it's a good job that this end becomes pretty natural to me. I hope all of you Villa fans have enjoyed your impromptu lie down after Barrett's prediction there. But yeah, Talk of the Trinity on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell if you want notifications. There's a lot of people who watch the videos that haven't subscribed yet. So why not? You might as well do it. There's Geezer, Freezer, Tyrone Mings, The Cleaner. You've got all of those places, Apple, Spotify as well, that you can listen to the podcast. If you actually ask Tyrone Mings, he may recite it back word for word. Spoiler, he won't. But at the end of the day, there's only a few more things I can say, because I'm still lost for words. And that is, cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. And Villa till I die. Up the Villa.